Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Archaeology After Dark. I'm, of course, your host, Daniel Rhodes, coming to you from a different location, codenamed Mom and Dad's house. I'm here visiting. You know, it's Labor Day weekend, so people are taking off a little early. I'd like to introduce my guest, Michelle Rothgaber from the Arkansas Archaeological Survey. Michelle, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am the Educational Outreach Coordinator with the Arkansas Archaeological Survey, and I'm also an archaeologist. I did my PhD at the University of Arkansas, which is kind of who I still work through. And I did my research in Northeast Arkansas on Mississippian archaeology and earthquakes. And so I can talk a little bit about that, but really in my position here as the Educational Outreach Coordinator, I work with archaeologists across the whole state of Arkansas to make sure that the public knows about the archaeology that we're doing. So I guess, can I share my screen quick and show you?
Yeah, go ahead. While you get that set up, so a lot of you have been writing into me, emailing me, texting me, saying that, Daniel, there are in fact other states besides the state of Alabama where people do archaeology. And I found that hard to believe personally, but you know, I did some research and all of you are absolutely right. There are, in fact, other places besides Alabama where people do archaeology.
I mean, you're with the Alabama Society, right? So it makes sense to focus there, but
yeah.
But yeah, so in Arkansas, we have a really cool and sort of unique setup with the survey in that we have 10 research stations across the state in all different geographical regions. And in those stations, we have working, researching archaeologists who are doing work in their particular location and sometimes in particular time periods within that location. So we have historic archaeologists, we have pre-contact archaeologists, and then within the pre-contact archaeologists, we have different time periods that different people focus on. And so I've pulled up the website. I think you can see it.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, and I will just kind of scroll through it really quickly, but it's archaeology.uark.edu, and you can find all kinds of stuff there. But what we really think is cool is we've got our little research stations tab, and it pulls up information about each station across the state and where it is. And under here, we have our contact information for all of our different archaeologists that are working. So it's very cool when people email just our general website or talk to me at a community event and they say, I have this stuff, I want to know more about it. I maybe have family with property somewhere else. I can refer them to their local archaeologist who will know a whole lot more about their particular region than I might know or that anyone in Fayetteville might know. And like I said, they all have contact information here and they all do public outreach. So you can get in touch with whoever you need to, and we can always put you in touch with those people as well. Particularly at SAU and at UAPB, we have historic archaeologists. So if you have historic artifacts or you're interested in a particular historic time period, we can put you in contact with one of those people. And then, like I said, we have people doing pre-contact work at different time periods. And you'll notice that some of these, we have Parkin and Toltec, and those are actually state parks with the state of Arkansas. And we have archaeological research stations at those state parks. So we have archaeologists there who are actively doing research about those parks, about those archaeological sites. Parkin is a Mississippian period site, and Toltec is a woodland period site. So those are really exciting opportunities because we have someone focused just on one site and that period, and they help to protect the site. They help to interpret the artifacts and the site for the public. They help with museum displays within the state parks, visitor centers. So it's a really cool opportunity. I worked at Parkin for a while and got to help with displays and help with public outreach programs, help the interpreters. And it was really great to see people really, really appreciate the archaeology in Arkansas when they get to come to a state park and interact with an archaeologist who's doing work there and see what's going on and see some archaeology and how it works and the lab work and all that kind of stuff.
So each one of these stations is attached to a university, or it's run by the survey itself?
So they're co-sponsored by the individual university that they're at. The survey at large is its own state agency, but we're kind of umbrellaed underneath the University of Arkansas system. It's a weird setup, but it's kind of for financial purposes to do.
Hey, I mean, if it works, I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, but it's great because at the individual universities, some of them at like Monticello and Southern Arkansas University, Henderson State, they're smaller universities and they don't have an archaeologist on staff necessarily, but because we have a survey station there, the students at those universities get access to an archaeologist and they get to take some archaeology and anthropology classes that they might not have the opportunity to otherwise. So it's really kind of a nice partnership between the University of Arkansas system, University of Arkansas schools, Arkansas State University schools, and then some, I think there's a couple of private colleges in there too. And like I said, the universities give some classroom or some lab space to our archaeologists, and then our archaeologists teach a couple of classes each year for the universities.
Well, I actually think that's a really great, system. That way, if the university doesn't actually have an archaeological program, they still have access to the artifacts and the person who works with them, so they can go and look and ask questions. And honestly, that's what we as an organization are trying to do, because, we want to connect to the community. We want people to see the history that's right under their feet. And we want them to come and talk to us about it so they can learn more about it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I came into this 10 years ago. I've been working for the survey. And I just think, yeah, it's a really amazing program because so many people, the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville has a degree in anthropology and they have archaeology classes and all of that, but most of the other universities don't. So it's really great that people who aren't going to travel all the way to Northwest Arkansas to go to college still get some access to archaeologists and get to take some classes. And then, like I said, the public is always welcome too. I think a couple of with COVID and everything, but a couple of our stations have started public lab days again. So they invite anyone who wants to come out to the lab, learn about some archaeology, help do some artifact processing. It depends what they're working on that day, but people are invited to come in. And we actually on our website have an events calendar up here at the top. And we've got those public lab days and how to get in contact with the station archaeologists on there. So if people are interested, I know you're kind of focused on Alabama, but if anyone else is watching, they are welcome to check out our calendar and get in contact with our archaeologists doing lab days, get in and do some archaeology.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the whole reason behind everything, is get in there, get your hands dirty and learn something while you do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, and we actually work quite closely with the Arkansas Archaeological Society, which is the, I guess, amateur archaeology group. And actually calling them amateurs seems a little silly. They don't do it as a profession, but many of the people in the society have been doing archaeology for a long time with the survey. And we typically in the summer in June run a training program for 2 weeks, and it involves field work and lab work. We go to different parts of the state where the local archaeologist has a project that needs done, and the society comes in and helps to excavate and to process all the artifacts out of the field, and to get them in as good of condition as we can get so that they can be sent back to that local station for the rest of the analysis and processing. And the survey and society have been working together on this project for, I guess, 50 years at this point. We go to different locations every year, but people get to come in and help to do excavations. Let's see if I can get to the society's website. Yes, so that's the Arkansas Archaeological Society's website. And if you're interested in learning more about them and what they do, this is where to go. There's a membership form. I think it's $25 a year to become a member. And so if you're interested in, if anyone's interested in the training program, or coming to Arkansas to do some work and learning about archaeology from the field to the lab to analysis to writing it up, you can do that through the society with the survey. And we've had a lot of good work done over the years through that program. So we really like it.
That's one thing. When I first started out doing archaeological work, this was probably 4 or 5 years ago, is how involved the entire process actually is, from excavating something from the field, taking it back to the lab, spending 3 days washing the mud off of it, and actually seeing it, nice and clean and presentable to students, people in the community. And they're like, wow, this was like right under us the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that during that training program, people really start to realize how much work archaeology is, because when you say archaeology to someone, they're like, oh, let's go dig. And we do that at the training program. People do get to excavate, but then they also go to the lab and they see, yeah, we spent 2 days excavating, but now it's going to take us 7 days to wash all of this stuff. And then it's going to take even more days to analyze it and get it put in some kind of form where we can display it, talk about it, publish it. So that's something we really like about the training program, as well, as that it kind of dispels that belief that archaeology is all about just digging stuff up. And like, we really try to show people that it's a lot of analysis afterwards. You're going to spend years in the lab after your excavation and your field work, processing everything, getting it ready so that we can share it with the public.
Yeah, the site I did my field school work at was a French fort from the late 1600s, early 1700s. And people have been doing excavations there since the 1980s. And, we invite people from the community to come out and look at it, and they had no idea it's been there that long.
Yeah, it's always really interesting, especially we go into kind of rural areas a lot of times, because that's where, a lot of Arkansas is rural, and a lot of the sites that we're looking at are in rural areas, and people know that there's archaeology around, but they don't necessarily know quite how extensive it is or how important it is. And that's part of what we like to try to talk about when we do public events around the training program, is how important the local archaeology is and how much it can tell us about the past and the past of Arkansas and how long people have been in the state and the kinds of things they were doing here. Because I think people really appreciate it more when they realize all of the things that we can learn from it when it's in place. Because of course we always have people who know sites are around because they go and pick up artifacts in plowed fields after rain and stuff like that. They just collect things. But those same people, when they realize what we could do with it if it had been in its own context before they picked it up, sometimes they're really surprised, and they really want to make sure that they keep really better track of where they're finding things and where sites might be, and they can work with their local archaeologists to make sure that the sites they know about are registered so that archaeologists know about them as well.
Yeah, that's something we spend a lot of time doing. Actually, the meeting we had just the past few weeks, we actually invited people from the local community to bring in their artifacts to identify them so we could tell them about them, but also so we could learn where they found them, so we could go back and possibly, conserve the site, protect it, and learn more from it. And honestly, more people are happy to do that than they have been, in the past. They think that we're with the government, that they're automatically going to move in with our black helicopters. We're archaeologists. We can't afford black helicopters. Right. We don't do that. We don't have the budget for that.
Yeah, that's what we drive bright white trucks. You see us coming a mile.
Yes, we do. Everyone has the bright white truck and the bright yellow vest so that you don't shoot at us when you see us. We would appreciate you not openly firing your weapons at us while we're out in the field. We would really appreciate that.
Yes, that is always nice. Whenever you hear gunfire at an archaeological excavation, you're a little bit nervous.
Yeah. So, how long has the survey been an organization? How long have they been actively working in the state of Arkansas?
Yeah, so the survey was established actually in 1967, I believe, but then it didn't get funding until 1968. But it has been at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. It was originally kind of part of the University of Arkansas Museum, and that's where our first director came from. He had been working at the museum. He became the director of the survey, but the society actually existed before that. And Archaeological Society members were really instrumental in getting the survey, which is the professional organization, started because they really wanted professional archaeologists working in the state and learning about the archaeology here, which I think is a really great story because you don't always have that good communication between professionals and amateurs and just interested people. But yeah, so the society has always been really important to getting the survey started. And then, I don't know all the details of it, but the people in Fayetteville worked with different universities around the state to have that partnership where they would put an archaeologist at their university, they'd teach a couple of classes, and they'd get lab space in the university to be able to do their research and all of their lab work, and they'd work out of there. And so there have been a couple that have switched over the years that are at different places now than they originally started, but I think that for the most part, these have been really long-term partnerships. I think our newest station is at Fort Smith, and even that one is, I think, 20 years old. So, these are long-standing partnerships, and we get a lot of really good work done in these areas. And I think that neither party is sad that we're there. We're all very excited to work together, and we get a lot of good opportunities by having those partnerships.
So I know this is a question you probably get a lot. Who pays for all this? Does the survey actually pay for it? Do the universities pay for it? I know money is an issue that is constantly, thrown at people. Will we be able to afford this? Can we pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
How will we have to write a grant and a 2-page proposal for this?
Right. Yeah, so the survey itself, just kind of the base salaries, the rent on the buildings, keeping the lights on, all of that stuff is funded by the state. We're a state agency. So we have a budget that the state legislature puts together every couple of years and gets passed. But then the archaeologists who work at the different universities around the state, the universities there do pay some of their salary because they're teaching a couple of classes for them. So there's a little bit of a salary. It's in the contract, there's something about how much of their salary they'll pay. And then for the training program or things like that, we do have to get external money for some of that. Some of that is, it's all internal staff that's working it, so we can work it. But there are a lot of expenses that go into an excavation: housing, food, the equipment that you'll need, the gas money to travel back and forth to the site. And so we do rely on the society to provide some of that money. And then we also, whoever the survey archaeologist who's running the dig, they apply for external grants as well to help support the analysis after, or some of the work as it's going on. And that comes in different forms. Sometimes we partner with like the USDA Forest Service or something like that. And so there's some funding that way. It really kind of depends on the particular project and where it is and what we're studying. But yeah, the money comes mostly, like I said, as state funding, but also external grants, which, yeah, you're right, is a lot of work. It just puts one more big hurdle to get before you can start really planning the dig, is figuring out how you're going to pay for it all.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, a lot of people don't think about when they get into this professionally, is how much the logistics, how much money they actually have to spend on, just day-to-day operations, snacks. That is a crucial thing. You have to have snacks. You can spend $100 just restocking your medical kit, and luckily you won't hopefully have to use it, because that's bad, and it looks good on everybody when everyone comes back scratch, wound free, back to the lab.
That is what we prefer. No wounds. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Medical kits are expensive and they expire. So even if no one gets hurt, you still have to throw all of that stuff away every few years and start again. But yeah, I mean, those are one expense that I like was very surprised when I realized is the little plastic bags that we keep the articefacts in, like little Ziploc bags. They're so expensive.
Yes, and we have to get like the giant sized ones too to put, 100 pottery shards in, and then we have to spend a week sorting through them and then put them back into the bag.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and someone told me because they're plastic, they're based on the price of oil and gas because they're all part of that same system. And that's why they're so expensive. And that blew me away when I learned that.
Okay. I'm just learning that now too. That's blowing me away. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. So we have to, hope for low oil and gas prices so that our Ziploc bag expenses.
So that we can get archival bags. Yeah, it is. Yeah, like I said, I was very surprised when I learned that because the prices were different from like a week to a week when I was going to make some orders, and I was like, "What's going on?" And someone told me, I was like, "Oh, okay."
And then there's the specialized stuff we have to buy, like the acid-free archival boxes that are like $75 a piece, and we need 100 of them to store artifacts. And we're like, "Oh God, we don't have space for these. We don't."
Yeah.
Have to rearrange the entire lab just to fit this one box of stuff.
Yeah. We are one of the bonuses, I guess, about being spread out all across the state is different stations have different kinds of amounts of storage space and lab space and things. So we are able to buy, like, we keep most of our artifacts in Rubbermaid containers, I think 5-gallon ones. But we don't have a lot of storage space at some of the stations to keep them. So we can buy them in bulk and send them all down to one station that has a big storage area. And then when people need them, they're able to just go to that station and get the amount that they need for, a couple of months worth of time or whatever they're looking for. So we do get to save some expenses, and that way we can buy things in large bulk quantities, which keep prices somewhat down. But you're right, storage is a whole issue, and long-term storage and curation of the artifacts is then a whole nother ballpark of space and price. And
yeah, you have to worry about the temperature of the room they're being kept in, the humidity of the room, the lighting, all that has to be taken into account if you're going to put something into storage for more than a week or so.
Right. And that's something that I think a lot of our society members and people who come to excavations don't think about as well. And I've taught some classes at the Society Dig, the training program that we do. And we've talked about the ethics of excavation and then artifact curation, because everything we take out of the ground, we have to keep forever and keep it in proper conditions, and how much that costs and how much space that costs, and like air conditioning, and like you said, the humidity in the room, and just where we're going to physically keep it, if it will fit in a box, if we have to do any special kind of curation methods, and all of that has to be thought about before you start any kind of excavation, because you have a duty of care after you've taken it out of the ground. And I think that's something people don't really consider at large until they are faced with it too. And it was a really interesting discussion with some people who it was their first time at an excavation, and they're presented with this ethical dilemma of what you do, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize."
One of my favorite things is when I go out like on a survey. I've done 3 or 4 at this point, but you get first time people who have lived in like a major metropolitan area their entire lives, and they're like surrounded by all this forestry, and they're like, "Okay, I didn't know this was here," because it's not made of steel and or concrete. So this is so amazing already. And then you just spend the whole day like blowing their minds, and they have this like look of like bewilderment / surprise the entire day. And they're like, "So you say you do this professionally?" Yes, that is what I have been saying for the past probably 5 hours now.
Yeah. I mean, that happens here too, for sure. I actually am from Wisconsin. So when I moved down to Arkansas, I hadn't ever really seen cotton up close, but they grow a lot of cotton in Arkansas. And so I had that moment with getting to go out in a cotton field and see it growing and get to like touch the actual plant, which I'd never seen before. So that was really cool for me. but yeah, you're right. We get people who come from like Dallas or Little Rock, and they've not been in the backwoods with the cottonmouths around and other random snakes and mosquitoes, chiggers, the whole gamut of nature. You really get an appreciation.
Yes, it does hit you like a freight train here in the South. If you're coming from somewhere up north, that's a very climate controlled region. It's, the 70s to freezing most of the year. You come down here and it's a sharp 80 to 90 most of the year. And then, it's the hotter years. So it stays like that up until Christmas.
Yeah. My first years in Arkansas, I did not really appreciate how hot it was going to get. And it got very hot. Now I'm pretty acclimatized to it. So when I go back to Wisconsin for Christmas, I am freezing to death because it is just too cold. But yeah, I mean, it's been 95 here for the last 2 weeks, and it's like, it's hot, but we can deal with it.
So I just thought of this. Since you have a different station in each section of Arkansas, does that mean each station is responsible for a certain kind of artifact? Like, say, one station, if you find a piece of pottery, you send it to them to study?
No, I'll say kind of no, kind of yes. They are responsible for their particular counties. And on that map on the website, the counties are color coded. So if you are, if you're in one of the counties up in the northeast corner, then your local archaeologist is at ASU, Arkansas State University, and they keep, for the most part, all of the artifacts from those counties at ASU. And then if you're in the Monticello region in Southeast Arkansas, most of the artifacts are kept there. The only difference would be if it's a specialized type of artifact that someone is particularly interested in. So we have one archaeologist in Southwest Arkansas who does a lot of Civil War and battlefield archaeology. And so if people have artifacts that relate to those topics, then he is very interested in that, and he wants to see them and be able to study them or know about them, no matter where in the state they come from. And so maybe he will archive them there or curate them there, or maybe they'll stay within the station that whatever county they came from. But he likes to know that because that's his kind of overarching research project, is looking at battlefield archaeology and Civil War archaeology. And the same thing, if there's like a particular point type, there are some archaeologists that are particularly interested in those. So that information kind of gets given to that person, whether the actual artifact goes there or not. The data about it gets to the person who's doing that particular research.
So one last question before we wrap everything up. Has COVID had, what kind of effect has COVID had on you? I'm sure you get that question a lot.
Yeah, it's had a disappointing effect this year, honestly. We've had to cancel the society training program last summer. And that is usually kind of our big fun event of the year. We get to do a lot of research, but we get to bring in all of our people, our society members, and they come from kind of all over the country at this point, and everyone gets to catch up and see each other and get some good research done. And we haven't been able to do that. So we didn't get the research done. We didn't get to see everybody, see what everyone's doing. And we've also had to put our annual meeting online last year, and then again it's going to be online this year at the end of September. So the society has a YouTube channel, and all of the presenters just uploaded their talks to the YouTube channel. So if anyone's interested, you can still watch the ones from last year, and if you want to see the ones from this year, they'll be up at the end of September. And again, that's a big event where people come from out of state, and we get to present all the research that the different stations have done that this year, and that sometimes cultural resource management firms have done over the year. Different people come in and present what's been going on in Arkansas. So it's a nice way to catch up on all the different work that's been going on in the state. And again, we've had to put it online. And like I said, some of the stations have started back with their open lab days. I don't know if they're going to get to keep going, but for now, some of them are. But pre-COVID, many of our stations had open lab days on different days of the week or evenings. And so people could come in and do archaeology, and they haven't been able to do that for nearly a year, or I guess over a year at this point. So yeah, it's been a bummer in terms of the public outreach stuff. We haven't been able to let the public do it, but we've still been working. So we've gotten a lot of research done. And I think truly probably we've gotten a lot more writing done, and we've been working on some new website development stuff that we hope will be really cool updates when we roll it out to the public. It's not all quite done yet, but so we've kind of changed our focus a little bit and gotten to do some other stuff that sometimes we don't have time for when we're in the lab with volunteers doing artifact processing. But yeah, it's been a strange year, and we were hoping to get back into full swing of having people in our labs again, but Arkansas is getting a little bad again. So we might be not letting very many people in or not letting people in at all. But so far, like I said, check the events calendar. You can kind of see where we are.
Yeah, we've had to do the same thing. We actually had our first in-person meeting since the start of COVID. Let's see, that was 2 weeks ago now, and everyone was just so excited to be anywhere but inside their house.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we were like still looking forward to having this meeting at the end of September. And I think about a month ago, the society board was just like, I just don't think we can do it. We can't ask 100 people to show up to a conference room. So yeah.
I mean, I made the suggestion that we just like hose down the people as they come into the meeting. That was frowned upon by a lot of people. Other people thought it was a great idea, so we decided not to do that.
Yeah, I've been going to a lot of virtual meetings with people from other states who do outreach and trying to figure out what we're all doing moving forward. And everyone, I think, at this point is like, we just don't know. It's like month to month what we can do and what we can't do. So just play it by ear.
What's really fun about going to a virtual meeting is one that doesn't take place on this continent. I was invited to one that was out of a university in China or Japan, and it actually took place at 3 a.m. my time. And I'm like, okay, I want to learn about this, but not 3 a.m. want to learn about it.
Yeah, I know. I haven't done that. I've had people speaking to me from like Europe or I think Europe, and yeah, so they were way off of their time, but I have not had to get up in the middle of the night for any conference so far. So
I don't recommend it because it throws off your entire day. And
yeah,
most of the time they're nice enough to post it on YouTube.
Yeah, we've been trying to do that with a lot of ours. We've had Zoom monthly meetings for the Archaeological Society over the last year, and a lot of them have been posted on YouTube. But it's just not the same as getting to be there and interact with people and ask your questions. And I don't know, hopefully we'll get back to it someday.
Someday, crossing fingers, someday.
Yes, absolutely.
So last thing, I usually wrap up every episode with this question. Say somebody wants to get started in archaeology, not just in Arkansas or just in general. What kind of advice would you give them?
I would say if you are a college student, then take an anthropology course, just kind of see if you are actually interested, or maybe even a sociology or history course, depending what your university has. If you're a high school student or even elementary school, see what your local museum or historical society can kind of hook you up with. So in Arkansas, that would be the survey, and we would absolutely, we have, I think, as long as you're with a parent, we kind of let any age participate. For our society training program, I think you have to be 8 or 10. But a lot of local historical societies in different counties have museums that maybe you can get involved in the museum somehow, or get involved with the historical society and like start learning about history, and then you can go back further when you get to archaeology. And I guess, yeah, I think like being excited about history is kind of the first step, because archaeology is a little bit harder to access in some places. Where I grew up in Wisconsin, we didn't have archaeologists around, at least that I know of to this day. But in Arkansas, like I said, it's a little easier to access because we have them all over the state. But a lot of states, they're kind of at big universities. But if you are interested, reach out to an archaeologist somewhere. Emails are available. So if you have a university somewhere and you find an archaeologist, email them. I bet they would be happy to email you back and talk about the local archaeology in the state and how you can get involved or how you can read more about it, and things like that. I think for the most part, archaeologists are pretty excited to talk to someone else who's interested about archaeology, to anyone. So
Yeah.
just reach out.
Well, Michelle, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I think everybody who watches this will really enjoy learning about Arkansas, because it is, in fact, another place besides Alabama. I'm admitting it now, there are other places besides Alabama.
I mean, and Arkansas is a pretty cool place. I mean, I've only spent a little bit of time in Alabama, but Arkansas is cool. You should come and hang out with us. So.
Hey, if I didn't have to be in graduate school or go to these meetings or go to work, I would definitely come to Arkansas.
Fair enough.
Thank you again so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.